We're ready.
You are recording.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 4 o'clock when we have a quorum of ASCC commissioners. And so let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. We going to do roll call?
We are going to do roll call. Sorry, this is my first night going completely electronic. So I appreciate everybody's patience for doing that. We're trying to get the hang of it. Okay, Commissioner Sill.
Here.
Vice Chair Ross.
Here. Did you hear me? I'm here.
Present. Yes, now we hear you. Thank you.
Good.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah.
Commissioner Koch will be absent this evening, and Chair Breen.
Here. And so we'll start off with oral communications. If there's anyone in the audience or just out there in the world who has a comment to make about something which is not on the agenda this late afternoon, this would be your chance to speak. We can hear the comments, but we really can't take action because it wasn't on the agenda. And not seeing or hearing anything, we will proceed into new business. We have 2 items this afternoon. We have a preliminary action on Goya, and we have an action on Corte Madera. So why don't we start with that? Is Dylan doing the report on this?
Dylan will give both reports, and I'll just give a brief introduction. So this is our second ASCC meeting using Zoom. So we're still working out some of the kinks. We appreciate everyone's patience. We will not be using the chat function in Zoom. So the chair will call for public comments and will call for the applicant's presentation. So you should know then when to speak. And when there's public comments from members of the public can use the raise their hand in Zoom, or if someone has called in, then press *9 on your phone to raise your hand, and the chair will call on people and staff will assist with this process. And applicants will be panelists this afternoon and have the ability to speak. If it's not your item that's up right now, it's certainly up to you if you'd like to have your cameras on or off, if you're the first or second item. And we want to make sure that we've got all the right people as the panelists for the first item. So I want to make sure everyone is here.
Is there someone here for Corte Madera?
It looks like, okay, Scott Brown, we've got you. I'm moving you to a panelist. Okay, Tammy Lee, moving you to panelist. So that is the applicant team and the homeowner for the first item. So I think
We can
with
proceed.
that, we are ready to do a presentation. So hand it over to Dylan.
Thanks, Dylan. Uh-oh.
You're still on mute.
What about now?
Good.
Yes? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we're starting with 138 Goya. Okay. So let
No.
me-
No,
We're starting with Corte Madera.
Corte Madera. Okay. Perfect. Good thing I asked. Otherwise, we'll be talking about another project. Okay, give me a moment. I have to share my screen with everybody first. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. So this item is a architectural review for a second story addition, and then a floor area exceedance of over 85%, landscaping and site improvements. And so just to give some background to the site, it is located at 319 Corte Madera Road. It's in the town's R115M zoning district. It's a little over a quarter of an acre at 11,761 square feet with an average slope of about 3%. The existing residence was built in 1958, and it currently has 3,016 square feet of floor area and is a two-story residence. The two-story portion is above the side-facing attached garage, which faces Corte Madera Road. So now turning to the site plan. And so the existing square footage, as mentioned, is 3,016. Code requirements are 3,348. The proposed addition, which would be 84.5 square feet on the first floor, as indicated in this little area here. And then there is an additional 126.5 square feet on the second level, would increase the existing house to 3,227, giving it a remainder of 627 square feet. The 85% rule on the property limits the home to 2,846. Given that the house is 2,855 square feet already, which is a legal non-conforming situation, the proposal would increase the size of the house to 3,066, and that would trigger an exceedance request from the ASCC to go from 85% to potentially 100%, the 3,348. Some other items to note: the existing impervious surfaces are 3,315. They are being reduced to 2,375 to bring them below the threshold. So there's no longer a legal non-conforming issue on site in regards to impervious surfaces. And then there's a slight increase to building height from 24 and 4 inches to 24 feet and 4 inches to 25 feet and 1 3/8 of an inch. Front and side and rear setbacks are not changing. Staff also wanted to note that the side setbacks are legal non-conforming given the structure was built prior to the town's incorporation. And this is the first time any major planning discretionary permit has been acted on. And then additionally, the amount of parking on site is not changing, 2 covered and 2 uncovered, so still in conformance with town code. So now kind of going through that in a little bit more granular state, staff just wanted to go through the floor plan to just identify some areas. And so I'm gonna move everybody around a little bit, all of everyone's beautiful face, so I can see this a little bit better. So my apologies. So when you're looking at the second floor, this area that's bounded by the green dashed line is the rough area of the 126.5 square foot addition. And then this rough area over on the first floor, as you're moving to the right, is the area, the 84.5 square feet. So staff just wanted to note kind of how the additional square footage on the second floor is to create a new master bath suite or a primary bath suite, and then also a stairwell area to the main level, and then closet, and then a pathway to the master bedroom on top of the garage. And so moving towards materials and finishes. So all of the materials are town compliant. The wall facades will be painted stucco with 3 various shades. There will be some wood trim primarily on the garage door, but there's also some wood trimming, board and batten trim on the shed dormer that is located on the side of the gable end, and then also on the jut out for the second story addition. So that's going to be a stained cedar. Additionally, there's going to be a new roof, which is a composite shingle that is a granite gray. The windows are going to be an Anderson 100 with black frame. And then there is a wood, metal awning, excuse me, that is above the new garage door, front-facing garage door, that is going to be standing seam metal that is a Mustang brown. And so moving towards the elevations, as I mentioned before, the height is just slightly increasing, but it's within the existing eave pitch point of the existing fenestration that faces Corte Madero currently. And then that additional component of the second story addition that juts out to create a second story massing above the entry, the new entryway, or the existing entryway, but is slightly jutted out with the first story addition. All right, and then moving towards the lighting plan, there are only 2 lighting fixtures proposed. There are 2 noted at the new entryway, flanking left and right the entry doors. Additionally, there are 2 fixtures proposed for the garage door, flanking left and right. And then one of the, in the same family, that is on the hallway or the wall facade that faces the front path. Staff wanted to note that the staff report, there was a last minute change on light fixtures from the applicant's team. And so staff just wanted to note that these fixtures do not have an integrated bulb. It is a off-the-shelf bulb. And so the green fixture, which is the entryway fixture, is a 35-watt max, which roughly equates to about 300 lumens. The blue fixture, the garage and the side approach fixture, it can accommodate up to a 100-watt maximum, which could roughly be 1,600 lumens. So staff just wanted to note in the original, the report, it notes the original lumens for the fixtures that were swapped out at the last moment. But these fixtures are dark sky compliant, so they do focus the light downward, and they are shielded from above. All right, and then moving towards the landscaping plan. The landscaping plan roughly equates to about 1,724 square feet of new planting. So no triggers in regards to the town's water efficiency landscaping ordinance apply to this project. However, this will be germane to the conversation as we discuss the floor area exceedance findings. But staff just wanted to note that the new landscaping area within the front yard is replacing the side approach driveway, as the garage is now moving from side facing to front facing, street facing. So you have a new drip zone 1 with predominantly manzanitas, which are a low growing species of ground cover. You have your new front driveway approach and curb cut. To the left of that, you have an additional landscaping area. And then noted as this small sliver up here, there are new planters with California lilacs or ceanothus that will be planted to additionally screen the second story addition per an agreement with the applicant and the neighbors at 195 Crescent Avenue, which staff will kind of touch on a little bit more in detail over further along in the presentation. And so public comments received. Staff sent notices within a 300-foot radius. Those notices were mailed on July the 2nd. The letters of support received prior to that noticing were attachment 3 of the staff report. Additionally, there were some letters received from 195 Crescent Avenue in regards to a neighbor agreement related to items such as hardscape removal and fence removal, which is noted as attachment 4, or identified in more detail as attachment 4 of the staff report. And so moving to the findings that are required per town code for the floor area exceedance from 85% to 100%. So the code defines that the one of the following, or all number 2, number 3, and number 4 have to be found, but number 1 is a set of 3 findings that need to be made. And so staff found that out of those 3 findings, that the larger building would result in a superior design, in terms of the grading, tree removal, and use of the property than would be possible with a project without the requested increase. No grading is being proposed. Tree removal, there's no tree removal, and the additions are within the building footprint, just adding some additional height to the structure. Secondly, there are no greater impacts to significant views enjoyed by neighbors than a project without the requested increase. There's no greater negative effect to neighboring properties than without the requested increase. And then lastly, the design and exterior materials used is keeping with the character and quality of the neighborhood, as it's just a refresh and update of the existing style of the home. And so these are the findings, standard findings that the ASCC needs to make in order to determine a position of approval for the project. And so with that, staff is recommending that the ASCC receive a report from staff, which we've done, receive public comments, consider the project and approve the proposed scope of work, and additionally the floor area exceedance subject to the conditions of approval. Staff wanted to note that an additional condition was placed on the project in relationship to the green building ordinance. The green building ordinance only requires that the applicant provide the checklist and certify during the construction phase. There's not necessarily a points that needs to be derived or whatnot. So staff has made it a condition that that occurs during the building permit submittal and then prior to the building permit issuance in order for staff to review conformance with that condition. And so with that, this concludes staff's presentation. I will stop sharing my screen and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you,
After I
Dylan.
get a glass of water, sorry.
Are there questions from the commission to Dylan?
I had one. I was having trouble with the math on the max floor area. How we got to a remaining 627?
Sure. Let me go to the staff report real quick. Give me a moment. Oh, okay. So the question is how we went from a. That's incorrect. Yeah. So the number should be
121.
Correct.
Okay. So I just wasn't sure whether it was me or.
It was my math. I apologize. So that number should read 121. Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions from Dave?
Could we look at the front elevation again? Did you identify what the trim color is?
Let's see. Let me actually go to the. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. Let's see. I believe the trim is going to be, are you seeing my screen, Dave?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I believe this, I want to say that the trim will be one of these three gray tones, but
there's one identified as trim in the center.
Right, so
the elevation makes it look white, and that's why I was asking.
It could just be the rendering, but yes, this is going to be the color. So it's a little hard. On my end, the color reads more gray, but I also have my screen at a different color setting. But yes, the trim would be the middle one.
All right, that's my question.
Al?
No question for me.
All right, then that is.
I did have one more question. Sorry, Dana. I can't recall when the lighting ordinance was revised, whether we continued to include a maximum wattage or lumens for exterior light fixtures. I see that one of the fixtures for the garage can accommodate a 100-watt bulb. I think the old limitation was 75 watts. And I'm just wondering, how that's handled when the bulb is replaceable.
Great question. I do know that there is a limit within the code in terms of the lumens. The challenge would be with a bulb that can be replaced, placing a condition on the property that you can only use a 30-watt bulb, for example. That would be hard to enforce.
Yes.
I guess and in all honesty, the fixtures were changed at the last moment. The original fixtures that were spec'd out did have an integrated LED, so it was easier to accommodate. An option would be that we could swap out, if I may, if I can find the information, we could swap, if the commission would like for us to bring forward the original fixture that had the integrated LED that was more adherent in terms of perpetual adherence to the outdoor lighting policy, we could make that as a condition of approval for the project.
Also, I would just like to say that it's my understanding that these bulbs or these fixtures are LED bulb compliant, so we would just switch those out for LED bulbs. And I'd be happy to send over those specifications if that's helpful.
Meaning that they do have a model with an integrated bulb.
Okay.
Yes, that would be great.
And Dylan, you talked earlier about just that there's flanking lighting on the at the front door and at the garage. We don't necessarily support flanking lighting. I mean, you really by code need to have one light per door. Is that correct?
My understanding is yes, that you would need one light per door. So in terms of minimal light and safety, you could reduce one of the garage fixtures, you could reduce one of the entryway fixtures, or you could center one of the you could do a chandelier or something that hangs versus having two.
I just think of the proximity of that one on the left-hand side of the garage is very close to the neighbor. But on the other hand, I know that they're dark sky compliant and covered. So anyway, we'll visit that later. I just was curious about your language. Okay, any more commissioner questions? Well, then I'm going to open this up to the public and see if there's any public comment on this item.
Anna, did you want to see if the applicant has a presentation?
Oh, yes, does the applicant have a presentation?
It's been a while since we've done this.
Yeah.
Is your architect there?
So I am the designer for the project, so I will, I just wanted to add a few things. First, I'd like to thank Laura and Dylan for their advisement throughout this process, and thank you for the review. This is definitely my first time presenting to the town and definitely remotely, so I may be slightly awkward. Please forgive me for that. But I just want to say that, you know, when I first started working with Scott and Catherine, they were really cognizant of the effects that their project would have on the neighboring community. They're active members of the community, they have strong ties with the people there. And so one of the first things they did when I started working with them is take me walking through the neighborhood, had them meet their neighbors and talk with them about what they think about the neighborhood and just, you know, the kinds of things that they are drawn to on their street. And we tried to keep all of that in mind in the design. We also really, you know, Scott and Catherine have been working on this for really like batting ideas around for 10 years. And we really were focused on trying to create a way to refresh their house, you know, with as little disruption to their own lives and to the neighborhood as possible, while still, you know, doing the necessary upgrades to make their home more efficient and sort of, you know, put their personal stamp on their house. So I'm going to try to share my screen here if I could.
Yes, looks like it's happening.
Okay, it's happening. So this is their existing house right now, and I would say that, you know, it's definitely, it's eclectic. It's charming in its way, but it's also kind of a hodgepodge of different styles. And it's, you know, it was built in the 1950s. A lot of the relationships of the interior aren't really set for modern 21st century family. But even so, we really wanted to preserve what we could of the structure, especially, you know, this kind of traditional roof line. We wanted, and seeing how that's in such close proximity to the street, we wanted to kind of honor that and retain that sort of character to the neighborhood. So in our design, you know, we kept the existing structure as is. And I think the, you know, discrepancy in height, we're not changing the height of the roof peak at all. I think, you know, it maybe just be the slope of the driveway that caused a slight discrepancy in height. You know, we're just popping out a gable on the roof to make the interior stairs more code compliant, but also to create a transitional massing between the west wing, you know, the 2-story garage structure, and the east wing where, you know, most of the bedrooms are right now. And I think, you know, we really worked to sort of soften the proportion, or to make the proportions more balanced and to soften the two massings, but still try to retain as much of the character as possible. And we put up story poles. So as you can see from the street, you know, the second floor addition from the Court Madera side is not very visible. This is the, that's the picture on the left. On the right is the picture taken from inside the driveway, just so you can see how the massing is relating. So I thought that was important to share. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hi, board. Sorry, this is Chris Romero. I'm the builder, and we brought Tammy in recently to do more design build within our own company. We do a lot of work with you guys in Portola Valley, and you know, Scott and Catherine's house it's kind of searching for a personality. If you look at it, I don't know, is it a chalet? Is it a cape? Is it, you know, what is it? So we really think that what everybody's come up with is really an improvement on what's being presented to the neighborhood. And honestly, let's be honest, the neighborhoods are changing. There's, you know, Portola is getting younger, and there's a lot more transitional design going on in the neighborhoods, and we think we came up with something that I know Tammy's proud of it. I'm proud of her. And I know Scott and Catherine really like this design, and they've been through, I believe you worked with Arcanum on one design, and we worked with some other designers in the past, and nobody quite got it. And they think, I can't speak for them, but I think we've hit on what they want, and you can hear that from them. And the other option is, you know, a lot of people would just have come in and torn that house down, and we would have lost a little bit of the character of the neighborhood there, with some, you know, a much more disruptive process. So I'm proud of the Browns for sticking with the old faithful there.
Thank you. I have a question. Is that a redwood tree in the front, or is it a Douglas fir?
It's a redwood.
Redwood.
It's a redwood, and you're keeping that?
Yes.
Yes. And what will be the material of the new driveway?
Concrete.
Concrete.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep.
So questions from the commissioners to the design team?
Nope.
Okay. So now I'll open it up to public comment. We'll see if anyone's there who would like to comment on this. And I don't see that. And so we'll bring it back to the commission and see if maybe Al, will you start off with comments?
I will. Okay. Yeah, I think that the design really is appealing. You know, for a structure that currently is eccentric. I think that you've done a great job making it look really cohesive, like it was meant to look the way it's going to look. And so I'm very positive on the design. I think it's going to look good from the street. I'm glad to see the impervious surface number coming down. I think that the landscaping that's been proposed is appropriate. And I agree with the proposed, the recommended finding that it's okay to go over 85%. I don't see any problem at all with that in this case. And I guess the one comment I have is I'm okay with the lighting that's been proposed. I'd just like to make sure that that we also check the back of the house and make sure that there's no non-conforming lighting currently. And if there is any non-conforming lighting, that be brought into code also. That we don't want to, just grandfather in some lighting in the back of the house. But I'm very much in favor of the design as presented.
Thank you. Jane?
All right. Yes, I'm also in favour of the design. I think it's thoughtful, sensible, inobtrusive. I like the correction of the fence issue, the fact that you've collaborated with your neighbours and worked the things out on that. I think it's a very considered design, so I like that, and I think it will suit the neighbourhood. The only thing I would say about the lights on the garage and the lights on the front door is we don't normally say that you can have one on either side. So that might be something that fellow commissioners want to address. But other than that, and with all of the designs that you've done, I think it's a good job.
Thank you, Jane. Dave?
Well, I agree with my fellow commissioners that this design solution creates a better, more cohesive look than exists there now. I happen to live in the neighborhood, so I walk by your house on an almost daily basis. I live down Canyon Drive, a couple blocks. And it's an unobtrusive house. It's set back a little bit from the street. It's got the nice redwood tree in front. So I would suspect that there will be a lot of people, even in the neighborhood, that won't really notice the changes, except of course they'll see the construction. So I really appreciate the way that it continues to collaborate with the rest of the eclectic neighborhood, and it really is quite eclectic. I think it's going to be a very attractive upgrade to the house. I don't see any problems with the increase to the concentrated square footage in the single structure. I can easily make those findings. On the lighting issue, I'm not completely opposed to the idea of flanking lighting. My main concern is that when you start to get a multitude of fixtures, then you start to really light the place up. And if the wattage is modest and the intention is not to keep them on all night long, I don't have a problem with the flanking. One thing that people have done with more significant fixtures where this has been an issue and they want the symmetry is to simply remove the bulb from one of the fixtures so that during daylight hours when you're looking at the structure, you get that symmetry. But at night, the illumination is limited to only the one side or the other where it's really needed. I'm not suggesting we make that a condition of approval. I'm just throwing that out there. But I would say that if the total lumens are well below the requirement or the maximum for a single fixture, then I don't have a problem with them being flanking. That's it.
Thanks, Dave. I agree with everybody. I actually really love this project, and I love the shed roofs, the unifying factor of the shed roofs together. So, I mean, that just brings it up such a different level. I asked about the redwood tree because, they have very shallow roots, and, depending on what your new landscaping is going to be, if that tree doesn't have enough room, it'll cause problems. So anyway, And I also really appreciate your outreach to your neighbors. I mean, you guys have, in the neighborhood, have really solved any issues that would have come up. So
Thank you.
the only reason why I mentioned the lighting was really kind of Dylan's language about flanking. You know, I just want to be careful that we don't put it out there that flanking is a way of looking at lighting. And as Dave suggested, even sometimes if people want to have the symmetry, we just say, put the fixture up and don't even wire it. So I was a little sensitive to the one on the left side of the garage just because of its proximity to the neighbor where their terrace is right there. And I hope you use the garage and don't have a lot of cars sitting out on the driveway, just again, proximity to their terrace. But
Yeah.
it sounds like you guys totally can work things out. And
Yeah.
anyway, and I
And
love your landscape plan is awesome. So I think this is going to be a great addition to the hood.
Thank you, Dana. We've
you.
been in really close contact with Pat and Jim next door and understanding their concerns. A couple things. Is it okay if we say a couple things?
Yeah.
Okay. So first, thank you for all the positive feedback. You're right that we thought very long and hard about the design of this home, and it's for a bunch of reasons. The number one is we just love this community. We love living here. We love living in this specific part of Portola Valley where we can send our kids on their bikes out the front door and see who's in the neighborhood. And it's really special to us. And so raising our kids here is a big deal. And we've been, I mean, as Tammy and Chris mentioned, we really have been working on this in several iterations for 10 years, including a massive, like, complete tear down and rebuild. And our sense was, it's just too disruptive and it's too much. And we wanted to maintain as much of the character as we could. And our number one goal is to make this space more livable. There are so many things that are weirdly not livable about it around insulation and heat and such that really aren't getting the benefit of actually using the whole home. And that was our main goal. So we're super excited to get started to make the house more efficient. Oh my goodness, so it doesn't feel like a sauna in the summer and like an ice box in the winter. And that I don't sit at my dining table and say, what's that draft? It's like, oh, it's just the window. So we're super excited for those upgrades, and also wanted to make sure it fit into the feel of this community, the sort of woodsy. We are equally passionate about redwood trees, so trust me, Dana, we're gonna take every measure to make sure that nothing happens to it. We view it as a critical fixture and something so beautiful about this property that we loved the second we saw it. So we appreciate all the positive feedback, and please know that we're gonna do everything we can to disrupt the neighborhood as little as possible and try to get this done as quickly as possible with minimal disruption. Do you want to say anything, Dave?
Nope. Just mostly we wanted to get rid of that driveway too for the redwood
Oh.
tree, because I think it'll open up a lot more space for the roots,
It will.
especially because it's starting to break through there.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the flanking lighting, thank you for the feedback and everything. One thing to call out that may not be on the diagrams as well, is there is a step down or two from that level of the driveway down to the side yard. So that's one reason why we just wanted to keep a little light over there. We don't typically leave the lights on outside at night. But if anybody ever had to get around the side yard, we just didn't want them taking a tumble down the stairs. But otherwise, Tammy did a great job.
Yeah. We're very grateful.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the positive feedback. And I'd like to just say thank you to Laura and Dylan. As I said, this was my first time presenting to the town, and they really offered a lot of guidance and advisement. So thank you.
All right, commissioners, is there someone who'd like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll move that we approve the project with the specified conditions.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed, so the motion carries, and congratulations. You're
Yes.
on your way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I also want to second the commendment of Dylan and Laura. This is a tough time we're all going through, and I know those guys take a beating a lot of the time.
Oh, we don't mind. That's why we're here.
Yeah, but you know, I've built in a lot of communities, all local to where we are, and I really do like your planning department and your building department as one of the best to work with, contrary to popular opinion. We actually get a lot of stuff done with you guys because you are willing to work with us, and you are willing to steer us rather than letting us flounder and submit a bunch of stuff that's never going to get through. So I do want it on the record that Laura and Dylan did a great job and helped to keep us on track, and I appreciate it.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, people, adios, and we're going to move on to our next item. All right, so up next is the preliminary architecture review at 138 Goya. Do we have a crew here for that? Yes, 1, 2, 3. All right, and Dylan, you're taking it from here?
Yes, now we'll discuss whether you go. Yeah. Okay, let me load up everything. Give me a moment, please. And we will, okay, let's see. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this project is a preliminary architectural and site development review of a new residence with a basement, pool, and associated site improvements. And then, so just discussing the site itself. The address is 138 Goya Road. The parcel size is about 3.1 acres, and the average slope is about 35%, with the slope downward from the northerly portion of the property. The existing home was built in 1966, and it's a 2-story, 4,087 square foot home with an attached garage. Also, staff wanted to note that there's a 10-foot trail equestrian easement that's located along that northeasterly property line as well. And then turning to the site plan. So the existing site has 8,050 square feet of impervious surfaces. The proposed is 12,054, giving a remainder of 1,123. I hope I did my math right this time. The max floor area of the home is 5,693 square feet, with a remainder of 1,821. And then to note, the design of the house technically attaches the garage to the main residence. So the attached garage and the residence is 4,975 square feet, with a remainder of 2,555. So the 5,693 is inclusive of a 1,194 detached accessory dwelling unit, which per town code and state law is to be reviewed separately and distinctly through a ministerial or staff level review permit. So that information is just for reference only, but staff just wanted to show how the numbers interplay on the site. Turning towards height, the existing residence is a 20-foot height, with the new residence having a 25 foot 8-inch height. The maximum height of the existing residence, it's noted as 34 on the plans, but I'm assuming it's also 20 feet. I'll defer to the applicant's team to confirm and clarify. But the proposed maximum height is 27 foot 2 inches. Front setbacks are shifting to a 50-foot front setback. The existing was a 91 foot and 1 inch. That's just better aligning the house to that front setback as it approaches the driveway, the side driveway approach. Side setbacks are slightly decreasing on one side and increasing significantly on another side. And then the rear setback is staying relatively the same, given that the building pad of the existing residence is being relatively utilized for the new residence. Parking spaces, existing has 2 covered, and from staff's interpolation, There is additional 2 uncovered spaces for the driveway, etc. Proposed is 4 covered spaces, and then there are 3 uncovered spaces and a new off-street parking. So staff wanted to note that one of the spaces that's noted as covered is within the new guest house. So the main residence itself has 3 covered spaces, but on-site totals are 4 covered. So just to kind of distinguish between the 2 structures, but to, once again, how all the numbers interplay collectively on site. All right, and so the next 3 slides are just going to show the basement, the first level, and the second level floor plans. And so this is the first floor plan, as staff noted. So this is the 3-car garage. There is a guest suite that is behind. It's a guest suite, pool cabana attached to the garage. And then there is a hallway that attaches this portion of the house that runs to the main living quarters, if you will. And so this hallway also acts as one of the framers of the new pool that's within this area. That'll be noted on some other slides in the presentation. And then this is the second floor that's slightly tilted at a 45-degree angle from the massing of the first level. So, sorry. So the second story is 2,193 square feet. The main level is 3,500 square feet, and that's inclusive of the 3-car garage, with a total of 5,693 square feet. And so turning to the grading plan, the total amount of movement of soils that triggers a site development permit is 670 square feet, or cubic yards, excuse me, which is an ASCC level review. Staff wanted to note that on the grading table, there were 2 amounts that were added into the cut and fill amounts by the applicant's team, and so those were subtracted out. So there was 815 cubic yards of cut for the basement and 150 cubic yards of the pool that were added in. So subtracting those numbers out gives you the cut and fill tables that are shown on this screen. Now moving to the materials and finishes. All the materials are town compliant. Some of the, there's existing redwood siding that is slated to be reused. And then there's also, in terms of, there is, in the materials and finishes, there's noting of corten steel fencing, but that is just, for all intents and purposes, synonymous to like a landscape wall, or kind of, doesn't necessarily meet the definition of a fence as we would define it. So I just wanted to clarify that that term is being used, but it's the approach or the application is more for applying to a board form concrete landscape wall or retaining wall, just to add some effect or design detail. And so the next couple of slides are just going to talk about the elevation. And so now moving towards the lighting plan, there are 5 fixtures being used. 1 is a pool light. So going from top to bottom, you have a wall sconce. You have recessed lighting that is predominantly being used along the walkways, mainly from the detached accessory dwelling unit, and also for the main entrance and courtyard area of the main residence. There is a integrated wall light that is used in the retaining and landscaping walls that frame out that front courtyard area. And then on the side to the left, if you're looking at these plans, and then also that frames the pool. There are path lights that are predominantly used to connect the detached accessory dwelling unit to the main residence through a path. And then lastly, there are pool lights that are integrated into the pool and to the attached spa area. Staff noted that, you know, the 6 lights in the pool and the 1 light in the spa, there is the opportunity if ASCC wants to reduce or configure the lighting in a different fashion to minimize light encroachment, to bring it more into compliance with town policy. But to note, all of the other fixtures are dark sky compliant and are compliant with the town's code in terms of lumens. So now turning to the landscaping plan. So the percentage of the maximum allowed water usage on site is 62%. The predominant areas that are being newly landscaped are the new courtyard area. There's some side garden. There's a new native seed mix lawn that frames the pool and the rear patio. There's some planting that connects the detached accessory dwelling unit to the main residence. And then there's some driveway screening along this lower portion. And then there's some trees and hedges to screen the detached accessory dwelling unit from the driveway as you approach. So the project is compliant with the town's water efficiency ordinance and is well under the maximum allowed water usage on site. And so now turning to public comments. So comments were sent in accordance with town policy, the 300-foot radius on July the 2nd. Letters of support were received prior to noticing and then also after distribution of the staff report. So we do have some additional comments that'll be read into the record. And staff also wanted to note, and the main concern or unresolved issue for the meeting was in relation to comments and concerns that neighbors at 148 Goya expressed related to view impacts. And so there was correspondence between the applicant and this neighbor. Those are listed attachments 8 through 15 on the matter. And the applicant's team will hopefully elaborate more on the issue at hand. And so with that, turning to the unresolved issue or the reason for a preliminary review for ASCC to provide comment, direction, and consideration is the comments that were received from 148 Goya, excuse me, related to the impact of the new residents on their established views. And so the challenge with staff was the design guidelines in relation to view corridors have very limited framework in terms of how to approach. And so given that complexity, the complexity of the issue and the kind of the mediation that's occurred over several months between the neighbor and the applicant, facilitated by staff, and also through the Westridge Homeowners Association, staff felt it best to bring the project forward to ASCC to consider the 3 options that Westridge did frame with the applicant's team. And there is a letter from Westridge within the comments being read into the record. So there's more information related to that. Or if there are any other options outside of the 3 that the ASCC may want to consider in moving the project forward to a future action. And so with that, staff recognizes that the neighbor concern related to the views are an outstanding matter that needs to be addressed before the project can move forward. And so staff is requesting that the ASCC discuss this and any other issues in its preliminary review of the project and offer the applicant clear direction on how to move the project forward. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Dylan. Are there, Dave's got his hand up already. All right, Dave, shoot.
All right. I just wanted to go, and this is just a correction for the record, similar to the one Jane made in the previous comment. I think there might be an error in the calculation of 85% of the maximum floor area. If you go back to that page 2 of the report, I think we'll spot it there.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me.
It's actually on page 3 of the report.
Okay. But so we're talking about the staff report, not the.
Correct. In fact, that slide will do, the one you just
Okay.
took.
Okay, let me put it back up then.
The maximum floor area is 7,514 square feet. 85% of that number is actually 6,387.
Yes.
And then the remaining quantity would be 1,412. So it doesn't fundamentally change the compliance. I just wanted to make sure it was correct in the record. So that the remaining is 1,412, I believe.
Okay.
Um,
Other questions, Dave?
Yes, I had one other question, and that is, I'm trying to recall what the building code requirements are for any sort of screening or protective barrier around a swimming pool. And if that, and this may be more a question that can be punted to the architect, is there going to be a requirement for some kind of fence around at least the exposed portion of the swimming pool, and what would that look like?
Most people in town use an automatic cover on their pools in order to achieve that building code requirement.
Okay.
So that's what we most commonly see, especially since we have such limited fencing. So if the applicant is proposing something different than that, then they can let us know.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right. Al, question?
I don't have any questions.
Jane?
No questions.
I don't have questions yet, but I'm looking forward to hearing the architect, the design team talk. So why don't you guys are up.
Can I just,
Bruna?
yeah,
Okay.
can I just give a little blurb about us and what led to this, and just so that,
Please do.
you know, I know a couple of you, but you know, most of you I don't know. But essentially, you know, I grew up in the Bay Area. I went to high school in Fremont High School in Sunnyvale. I went to Berkeley, Santa Clara University. And then I had to move to LA when I got married because my husband was doing his studying there. So then I was finally able to convince him, and we were able to relocate to Portola Valley, which I've always loved because of, you know, all the biking, et cetera, that I used to do, that I couldn't afford to live here when I was younger, but luckily we were able to afford a home here. And this was in 2003. We moved to our home in Golden Hills Drive. And so, you know, we loved the rural character of this area, and our son grew up here. He went to Windmill, he went to Ormondale, Corte Madera, and then Bellarmine. And, you know, he was a class co-president at Corte Madera, while I was the co-chair of the Portola Valley School Foundation, Endowment Foundation. And so, you know, we're really integrated into the community, Boy Scouts, soccer, all of that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, our son passed away of a brain tumor when he was 16. And that was in 2015. And it became very, it's a huge loss. And so it becomes very difficult to process everything. And anyway, we had been looking for a place for a while, but we love Portola Valley so much. And couldn't afford too many places around here. So when this property came up for sale, we were able to obtain it. It was in foreclosure, and we were able to obtain it. And so, it was just perfect for us because it was still in Portola. We could still use my neighbor, Kathy Stamey, to drop off Milo, our dog. And, all the neighborhood connections are still will be very much active. And so what we decided to do is hire Dan and team, because Dan actually built our deck here at Golden Hills. And, it's just a deck, but that was one of his first projects. He's our friend's son. And he did such a great job of just thinking about the environmental impact and how, just his approach to it was so great. We didn't interview any other architects. We went directly to Dan because he actually, by the time we came around to this, he's already won some, architectural awards and stuff. So, but luckily, he accepted our project. And so, you'll see, and I'll let him talk a lot more, but you'll see his approach and how they do all the, to turn my husband's vision actually into reality. I've never been into building homes, but it's my husband who would be here, except he's undergoing treatment. It's his vision that we want to implement in terms of, what you saw in the initially preliminary drawings that we can discuss a little bit more. Some of the requirements we told Dan that we needed to is we wanted to be one and done. We want to age in place. We don't want to go anywhere else. And we're the primary caregivers in the near future to my mom who lives in Cupertino and my in-laws who live in Phoenix. So that's a lot of old people coming over to our house, and we want to make sure there's enough space, etc., for everybody to be comfortable. And my husband's a chair of radiology at Stanford, so we also do host larger parties here, and that was one of the other requirements we asked Dan, is that there should be enough flat area for us to be able to host these fundraisers, department meetings, or department get-togethers, for various organizations that we're very active in locally. I work from home, so having a good home office is important. And now everybody works from home. So this was before COVID. And then, my husband also, takes meetings in the weekends with his team at home on a regular basis. And, one of the critical things was for Milo. He's sitting there on the couch, but Milo's our dog. And we want to make sure that he's comfortable as well. And, we made sure that, we love the trails, back of our Golden Hills, it connects into the Shady Trail. And I actually, every morning I go from Shady Trail all the way through Goya Escobar Trail. And we wanted to make sure the back of that new Goya hillside was cleaned up to a nice degree in that, we didn't want to just bulldoze down. We wanted to make sure that, we preserved the smaller oak trees, etc. So it took a lot of effort, believe me. There's a lot of people who are allergic to poison ivy, and there are poison ivy trees there that, it costs a lot of resources to do that. But we're very happy that it's all done. And, eventually we want to build our house. We want to be able to go on walks with Milo and be a part of that neighborhood while still maintaining our connection to Golden Hills. And that's all I needed to say, is just how we are part of the community, and not exactly looking forward to this meeting, but it's a requirement. So we'll just continue from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruna. We'll now toss it to the architecture team.
Great.
Hello,
thank you,
everyone.
Runa. Hi, thanks to the committee, and thanks to Laura and Dylan for all your help along the way. I'm Dan Spiegel. I'm a principal of SAW, which is a hybrid architecture and landscape architecture office up in San Francisco. And I've had the distinct pleasure of knowing and working with the Gambiers over the last 9 years or so on various projects and other things like that. I also wanted to just briefly note that, wanted to just briefly note that I grew up in Menlo Park, so just down the road, and took my piano lessons at Ladera and played Little League at Ford Field and learned to swim at Alpine Hills and soccer at Zotz. And I even went to college just down the road at Stanford, which is to say that Portola Valley has had an enormous impact on me. It's been a huge part of my life, but it's also had a major connection, the unique connection between this sort of landscape and community of Portola Valley has had a really big imprint on how we set up our practice as a hybrid of architecture and landscape architecture. And it's really changed the way that we approach our work, including this project here. Assume everybody can see the presentation, yes?
Yes.
So 138 Goya is it's a really beautiful yet complex property. There's an existing house up here that's sort of geometrically complicated set of volumes perched towards the edge of the hill. It's a little bit difficult to tell from this image, but then an extremely steep slope that leads down to this path below, which makes much of the land on the property virtually unbuildable. The existing two-story house is idiosyncratic for sure, very adventurous, in disrepair, and has some sort of strange decisions that are difficult to walk back, such as the swimming pool that connects from the inside to the outside of the front entrance, which has been largely filled in over the years. But we admire the material palette and the integration of the interior and the exterior, and the feeling of the outside when you're inside. And as I'm sure you all know, Portola Valley also has a rich history of architectural and vernacular forms in the surrounding area as well, using simple shapes and vertical moves to engage with the landscape in subtle but intentional ways. And these forms have become more adventurous over the years, but the desire to draw from the context, from nature, still is the guiding principle, even in the kind of newer forms of building. So we set out to design a home that would emphasize the horizon, that would be extremely energy efficient, that uses natural materials such as cedar and material textures such as board form concrete to integrate the design with nature. Carefully studying the siting, the massing, and the materials through drawings, physical models, as you can see here, and 3D simulations. The largest element of the house is a one-story mass that's oriented along the slope, keeping with the design guidelines of the town and trying to impact the cut and fill ratios as minimally as possible, with the second story which twists to align roughly to the existing residence's orientation. The second floor represents only 24% of the total square footage that is being proposed for the site, meaning that most of the building, the occupiable part of the building, still hugs quite low to the land. The rotated volume also means that there are no continuous two-story walls anywhere, that there is always a horizon line that's a part of the design so that you don't have large vertical projections. As you, I'm sure, are aware, there's a popular walking path that Aruna alluded to down towards the bottom of the property. And we've gone to lengths to improve the condition of that area of the site and understand that there's a kind of responsibility to the public who uses this portion of the land in that way to sort of minimize the amount of disturbance to them. The proposed location of the house coincides with the existing residence as much as possible, but pulls back from the edge of the hill here, as you can see from this outline versus this one, to defer to the views from below. The massing also has been studied pretty carefully to anticipate and respect the views of all existing structures that are adjacent to the property. A harmonious blending of new and existing trees further integrates the old and the new, and the building and the landscape. And as you can see here, there's we'll be leaving all of the oaks below. We're protecting the significant trees all throughout the property, and then complementing them with additional ones that are among the town list. Here's the view from the street. The existing driveway will be reused. up as far as it possibly can be before it has modifications due to the fire department turnarounds required. The house has a very low impact from the street level. Small low guest house greets you first and also provides the opportunity for the truck turnaround using the driveway as a portion of that solution. Further along the approach to the house, native trees frame the path and overhangs provide shade for both environmental performance and a grove of trees framing a statue of the Gambier sun below. As the materials age, the wood slats will blend further with the oak trees as they gray. Here's the east elevation that Dylan showed previously, showing the emphasis on the horizon as the second floor even notches into the first. Here you can see how that rotation and the notching make sure that there are no undifferentiated vertical walls that extend beyond a single floor at any given moment. The guest house maintains these relationships, but in miniature. And from the valley floor, the project is nearly imperceivable. Material palette is selected to blend in with the site and even reuse some of the old growth redwood that is currently used as the siding on the existing house as part of the siding for one of the new structures. The landscape softens the edges and blends the transitions, organizing around a series of inverted courtyards, as you can see here and here. And to answer the question from before, yes, it's an automatic pool cover around the pool. And also provide additional screening for privacy, working both in and out from the house. The Gambiers have done extensive neighborhood outreach from early on in the project and received written support letters from 5 of the 6 immediately adjacent neighbors and several others from other members of the community that they've gotten to know over the last many years. We have copies of these here, but I think they've been provided to you, so. So, through a sensitive massing, context-driven form, and robust community process, the integration with the landscape, the Gambiers' new home will provide them with an even deeper connection to this place and community. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Anyone else are you presenting also? I can't. It's so tiny, I can't see your name.
No, I'm as part of the team, but not presenting.
Okay, so great. So are there commissioner questions? By the way, we were all there today. We all had a site visit. And so we should sort of pick up in that context, fellow commissioners, if you have any comments about what you saw today, or if you have any questions. Dave?
Yes, I did get to visit the site, and Aruna, thank you very much for showing me around, and Megan as well, who unfortunately can't attend this meeting. The thing that I think struck me the most about this site is that there's quite a limited area available as a building pad. It's pretty much occupied right now by the existing structure. And I really applaud the design decision to move the new structure back away from the edge. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I'm actually making my comments. But what I'm leading up to is a question, which is how has the design, and if so, how, evolved or changed in addition to concerns expressed by the neighbor at 148 Goya? Is what we're seeing now the same design that was that they were first exposed to and concerned about 6 months ago, or have there been some changes already made?
Yes, this is the same design as before. In our meeting at the time, they expressed to us that the only design solution they would accept is one that's a single story, an entirely single story house, which we should note is shorter than the existing house at the same address. And I think you're exactly right. The concerns about buildability on the top of that hill have a tremendous amount of impact on how we decided to site things and how we tried to configure where the massings would go. As I noted before, of all of the inhabitable square footage in the proposed project, only 24% of it is on the second story. And we located that overlapping where the existing second story is as well, with an orientation that matches the orientation of the existing house more or less. And so while we understand that there are some impacts of this project, we've done what we can to mitigate it. We did have a number of conversations with the WASC and particularly Dave Strom, and that process was a little herky-jerky due to the pandemic and all the ensuing shutdowns, but they did have an opportunity to meet with the neighbors, and they suggested to us possible mediations, which we have explored but are separate from this project. That is something that we could discuss at greater length, but this project is the project that was proposed. Though we did offer a kind of collaborative mediation, we were declined in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Dave?
No, that covers it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Al, questions?
I don't have any questions, thanks.
Jane?
No questions.
Well, when Jane and I were up at the site today, she asked about skylights. Apparently there are 9/11 skylights. Is that so?
Yes, there are a number of skylights, although most of them are, in fact, I think all of them are situated well below the kind of parapet line of the structure.
The only thing I wanted to make sure was that there were no lighting installations within the skylights.
No, there's not.
No.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's my question. All right. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to public comment. And I saw some people were typing, and let's see if the public can get through here.
I think Monica Cheney looks like she was trying to say something.
Yeah. I saw her name pop up.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Monica. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Hi. So, hi everyone. I live at the house that is just up the hill from 148. So we live at 158 Goya. And I wanted to just, we did send in a letter as well in support of the Gambiers project. I, first of all, just want to give them some support on this call because I think it's a really challenging process for homeowners to go through, and we've been there. And so I know you've been through a lot, and I hope you feel the neighborly warm welcome that you would receive here from your community of other families on the street. And so I just wanted to say, I do know that property really well. My grandparents' best friends lived there, and we spent a lot of time at that house, and it's a fantastic property. The siting of the existing house is indeed tricky because it was so close to the edge of the hill that there was really no yard. And I can understand why they would pull it back from the edge, and why I can understand why that might require going up. It seems to me like a beautiful project. That current building, the current house there, as much as it was quite the place for a social fest in the 1970s and 80s, it does need a lot of attention. It has been in a state of disrepair. And I won't get into the details of that house over the last 15 years, but it's been a bit odd. And so I'm really excited that they're willing to take this project on. And I think they're doing their very best to find a solution. For what it's worth, I, as the most uphill neighbor, have not heard anything about the plans at 148 Goya that I see have been discussed in the letters going back and forth. So I would imagine it's probably difficult for the Gambiers to build something that doesn't bother a neighbor when they don't know what that neighbor's plans exactly are. And, you know, there's not a sort of draft of anything I've seen. So I just wanted to put out that we are in support, and I really wish the Gambiers the very best.
Thanks, Monica. Are there any other comments from the public on this item? I could swear I saw another name pop up.
Yeah, there was another hand up, but it looks like that hand went down.
Okay.
If we
All
just
right, so
pause,
then we'll,
oh, wait.
There's a new person.
There's more hands up now.
okay.
My name is Mark Leslie. I'm on Aruna's sign-in for some reason. I didn't know exactly how to do this, and I wanted to also comment and support. I'm around the corner. I'm on Westridge Drive at 738. I looked at in detail at the plans and the presentation, and it's just a beautiful home. I know the Gambiers for a long time, and we wanted to wish them well and offer our support of the project. We hope you guys do the right thing for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Other hands?
You've got hands up on the attendees, Stephen Paul.
That? Yes. Okay. Stephen Paul? Close.
Sorry, I unmuted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Skip Kang. I'm the owner of 148 Goya Road. I've been living in this area almost 40 years as well. I'm involved with a lot of different organizations. I'm a board member at Hoover Institute at Stanford University, Asia Foundation. My wife has been a board member of Asian Art Museum. I've been a member of San Francisco Opera for many years, and also several other nonprofit organizations. I bought this property. This is going to be my last home, just because of the view. No other reason, view. When I saw the story pole go up, I was shocked how much, it blocks my view right in the middle of my center of my view. So basically, I've been looking at this site design guideline. Basically, it says prevent the obstruction of views of adjacent property owners by structure or addition to existing structures. Also, WASC architectural guideline says architectural design should be in keeping with the rural character of the Westridge and surrounding properties. Adverse impact of construction on neighbors and the community should be mitigated wherever possible. You people were there yesterday or today, but were you able to come to my 148 and look at the impact?
I did.
I did.
I did.
Okay, just make sure. So basically, I feel that this design is not in compliance of those guidelines. And
thank you.
They made some suggestions of some mitigation for this. First of all, when I talked to Dan, and they said it'll come to me, and then I haven't heard anything, and they haven't done any mitigation at all, basically. So they didn't offer anything. So right now, I just got a mitigation letter just now because I wasn't able to get the package. I only able to download it on last Friday because of wrong address. And also I received a letter from the Westridge WASC letter just about a couple hours ago. So there are, I think they are proposing reduce the height by 12 to 18 inches and shifting the setback of 5 to 8 feet of the second floor. Their second floor is quite large, 2,190 square foot. I would be amenable to second floor if it's much smaller than what they are proposing now, close to the existing second floor. then I have no problem. I'm not against the second floor, but it has to be much smaller and much to the right of the property.
Was that it?
Yes,
Are
I
those
think
comments?
my attorney will make comments too. So, Stephen?
Hello?
Hi, which do you, is this a Stephen calling in on a different number that you're asking? Because I can add him to talk.
Yeah,
next.
You can
Okay.
Stephen call, please.
All right, hold on.
Stephen
One
Paul.
moment, please.
So, Scott Sutler.
Good afternoon. This is Stephen Paul, and I'm a land use attorney. I do represent Mr. Khan. The design guidelines are quite specific in your town. They require the minimization of adverse visual impacts, protecting view corridors, preventing the obstruction of views of the adjacent property. Now, having a 12-foot first floor ceiling certainly does not add to the reduction of obstruction of views. It actually enhances it. I know you have new story poles. They were down the last time I saw the property, but the story pole, the problem is massing, and that's what you have here. The WASC, and I'm assuming you've seen their letter, but they requested, and I understand the HOA and the distinction between the HOA and the town, but they requested a shifting of the structure, using their term, as to the right as far as possible. And I understand a 5 to 8 foot modification to the right is being suggested. The second story is the difficulty, not the first story. And as Mr. Khan said, the second story is not a problem in concept so long as it's located, again, to the right of the existing second story, and certainly not enhancing it. The trees are not an issue, it's a massing issue. Finally, and something for you, the Plan Commission, and ultimately the council, this is a CEQA issue, and you cannot in any good conscience say that there's not environmental impact on this property. And on that basis, the question becomes whether you can do a mitigated negative declaration or whether a full EIR is necessary, or a limited EIR for visual impact is necessary. But clearly CEQA is an issue and it needs to be addressed. Again, my suggestion for this commission would be to have a massing study, come back with a revised concept, and perhaps we can get to a mutually acceptable visual plan. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, then we'll see if there are any other comments, public comments.
We have a comment from Kathy Fitzgerald. I'll unmute her.
Kathy, you're up.
Kathy, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I am also a neighbor. I live on Dos Loma Vista, 2 blocks down from Goya. I walk the trails behind the property probably daily with my dog, and I have been apprised of all the efforts that the Gambiers have undergone in order to make this dream come true. And I wanted to just offer my support of them and to reiterate the amount of work and effort that has gone into this project. It is something that has been in the works for the family for a number of years, and I would love to see it come to fruition. And I'm in full support, as well as I know many of my neighbors on Dos Loma Vista are also in support of her project.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
I see no additional hands up.
Yes.
Yes.
Tammy Lee's friend.
This is Chris Romero. Terry and I are sharing the
okay.
moniker, but I'd like to go on a record as in support of Aruna and Sanjiv's project as well. It's well done. It's well designed. It's proportionate to the site, and I don't have a dog in the hunt, but nothing this family does is without thought and without consideration of others. They've been a mainstay in the community for a long time, and they're well loved by everybody. So this project is well done, and I'd like to put my support behind it.
Thank you. Additional comments?
Through the chair, we received written comments that were transmitted to the ASCC in the late afternoon today. And according to the new procedures, we read them out loud. And so if everyone would bear with me, this is the first time we've done this, and I haven't had a chance to meet everyone. And so if I get any names wrong or, mess up at all, I hope we can be a little easy on us doing this for the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and read those comments into the record.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So the first comment is from Kathy Fitzgerald. We've already heard her comments, and so I wonder if there's a way, can we ask her if we would like her comments back into the record? Carrie, if you would let her on the mic again.
Hi, this is Kathy Fitzgerald. I don't think I have too much more to add from what I said earlier, other than I implore you guys to make a decision in the favor of the Gambiers. I am sensitive to the concerns of the neighbor, but honestly, I think that what the Gambiers have proposed is very reasonable. And I'm hoping that you can consider the work that has gone into the project and grant them permission to proceed.
Thank you.
Kathy. So with that, we'll consider your comments into the record. Next is Monica Cheney. She has also already put her comments into the record, and the comments that she has in the letter are also very similar. Monica, can we consider your comments in the record at this time?
Yes, please. I'm hopeful that all of the ASCC commission members have a copy and can just, read it.
They do have a copy.
Great.
The next comment is from Greg Anderson. Greg and Mariah Anderson at 200 Goya. Portola Valley ASCC and those concerned, I am writing today to express our strong support for the project proposed by the Gambier family at 138 Goya Road. Mariah and I have thoroughly reviewed the proposed plans for the residents and have considered the various angles from which we will be able to see it. We feel that this beautiful home would be a great addition to the community on Goya Road and fits well with the style of other new construction in the vicinity, including our own. In addition, we feel that the current plan efficiently uses the buildable area of the property by creatively using various levels of massing, leaving more space for landscaping and green space around the residence, which would be ideal for screening, safety, and aesthetics. It is our hope that ASCC will approve the current plans, which seem to fall within the guidelines for size, height, and design. We strongly support the project as proposed. Next is from Greg and Brenda Monks at 393 Golden Hills Drive. I write today to express our strong support for the Gambiers submitted project at 138 Goya, which is scheduled to be heard by the ASCC on July 13th. My wife Brenda and I have lived next door to the Gambiers on Golden Hills Drive for the past 5 years. For the previous 10 years before that, we lived on Westridge Drive, just around the corner from 138 Goya. For the past 15 years, we have walked by 138 Goya nearly every day with our dogs, so we are quite familiar with the property and the surrounding neighborhood. Sam and Aruna Gambier are incredible people, and we feel blessed to be their neighbors. While we will be sad to see them move from our immediate neighborhood, we are excited at the prospect of them being able to build a project that suits their needs while still staying nearby. Brenda and I built 2 major remodel projects in Portola Valley, and we're quite familiar with how important it is to stay within the building guidelines. This project will be a beautiful addition to the neighborhood, and it is in keeping with all of the prescribed building requirements. We extend our enthusiastic support for their project and urge the ASCC to approve their plans as submitted. This is a tough one, sorry. Syriac Roading. I heard that the ASCC is reviewing the plans for 138 Goya on Monday. Wanted to send in my support for this. I have seen the plans and the planned building is gorgeous. I hope this will sail through on Monday. The neighbor who keeps voicing concerns about this project is acting completely inappropriately, in my humble opinion, because 2-level structures are allowed in this area. All the best. Next is from Richard Levy. And he says, I have known Sam and Aruna Gambier since they moved to Portola Valley. As retired CEO and chairman of Varian Medical Systems, I've had professional dealings with Sam at Stanford and know him as a friend, as my next door neighbor. Sam is a world-renowned physician, and Aruna, also an MD, runs her own company. You will never meet a more conscientious and gentle couple. The request for a permit on Goya seeks no variance and is within all guidelines. Delay in this case is unconscionable, particularly because of terrible health problems in their family and their desire not to be reminded of the death of their only son in their current house 5 years ago. They do not deserve the stress of trying to resolve the permit problems at this point in their lives. And last is the letter that's from the Westridge Architectural Supervising Committee from WASC. So this also just came into us, but it represents a lot of the conversation that they had already passed through the applicant, but I'll go ahead and read that into the record as well. Members of ASCC and staff, the purpose of this letter is to provide you with the perspectives of the Westridge Architectural Supervising Committee, WASC, in regard to the Gambiers' proposed new residence at 138 Goya. We have engaged as a full committee on this project since early January, and we feel that our perspectives are best understood around a timeline of that engagement. We were first contacted by the Gambiers design team in late November 2019 to arrange a site visit and plans review, which occurred on January 9th, 2020, including 3 of the then 4 current members of our committee. Following up on the January 9 meeting, we communicated back with Dan Spiegel of SAW Works in regard to some specific topics on which we needed more data, and Dan responded to us on January 23rd with additional diagrams and visualizations. Since some of our questions were guided by a sensitivity to potential impact on neighbors from structure massing and related view corridor impact, Dan also provided us with a complete path for contact and review of the project with all potentially impacted neighbors. We found this plan and approach to be extremely thorough and appropriate. In discussing this program for neighbor reviews, Dan noted that the one abutting owner he had not been able to contact was the owner at 148 Goya, which home had been occupied by a long-term renter. Subject to Dan making contact with this renter, WASC was contacted by Mr. Stephen Kang, property owner of 148 Goya, who expressed concerns about the proposed project and requested a meeting with WASC directly. Consistent with our general approach to these situations, we encouraged the 2 parties first to meet directly and see what common good they could find, resulting in a meeting on February 6th. By the account of both parties, not much progress was made at the February 6th meeting. The Kangs continued to express concern about the proposed 138 Goya project blocking key parts of the view corridor for 148 Goya, both of the current structure at 148 Goya and a new home, which he expected to develop plans to design and build in the next 2 to 3 years. At this time, the principal sensitivity of the Kangs seemed to be those elements of the proposed structure which would obstruct views of the Hoover Tower and the Stanford campus. For the next several weeks, with key processes slowed and halted by the COVID pandemic, little progress was made, and it was difficult to schedule meetings except by video. In late April, WASC was contacted again by the Kangs, and the same 3 committee members agreed to attend an on-site meeting on June 8th at the 148 Goya site to obtain a firsthand visualization of the view corridor impact as indicated by the story poles at 138 Goya. Our committee members left this meeting with the perspectives that A, the project would, in fact, create some meaningful view corridor impact for 148 Goya, which would likely be limited to 20 to 25 degrees of impact out of a total view corridor of maybe 200 plus degrees from the site. The current view corridor impact of highest sensitivity for the Kangs now seems to be blocking the views of the Dumbarton Bridge. B, that the specific impact would vary based on where the Kangs were going to site their proposed new structure for 148 Goya, for which plans have not yet been developed or submitted. C, that this view corridor impact could be mitigated, maybe materially, by some modifications which we would encourage the Gambiers to explore, including, number one, shifting the proposed design of the structure as is, as far to the south as the combination of slope and soils conditions and structural considerations would allow. Number two, to the extent possible, lowering the height of the second story elements of the structure. Number three, reducing the visual impact of structural massing and the associated visual impact by planting 2 to 3 significant trees directly in the sight line of the northwest element of the Gambier home and Dumbarton Bridge in the background, and or accelerated pruning and growth or shaping of the existing live oaks to achieve the same effect, while limiting height to that required to mask the structure. D, we did not conclude that it would be reasonable to limit the 138 project to a single-story home. First, because the existing structure has a partial 2-story element, and second, because this would force design and siting compromise on a site/parcel where this could be very challenging or result in a much less desirable outcome for the owners. Subsequent to this June 8th meeting, we encouraged Dan at SA Works to consider some or all of these mitigation options, which I understand are now reflected in the plans submitted to the town and ASCC to continue the dialogue with the Kangs. Apart from the specific and meaningful conflict with the current neighbor arguably most impacted by this project, our committee has viewed the design and plans as submitted to be very desirable addition to Westridge and Portola Valley, and subject to review of final plans, a project we would approve and we would encourage your support. Respectfully, Dave Strom, co-chair for the Westridge Committee. And that concludes the written comments.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a note so that the statement that the design is reflected in the plans, that's attachment, I believe it's attachment 16 or 19, and the staff report, that's a supplemental item that Dan and his team provided to explore the 3 options. So they're not I just wanted to clarify that the project plans in their entirety do not reflect these 3 items, as staff felt that there should be some space to discuss, so that way the plans can be refined for an additional review. So I just wanted to clarify that comment in their letter as best as I could.
Thank you, Dylan. Any other questions from commissioners? I have a question for Dan. What are the plate heights on the respective floors?
Plate heights, I will pull up for you right away, but the top elevation, Nami, I'm not sure if you can chime in on this, but the top elevation is something like 25.9, I believe, which is 2'3" below the maximum allowable height for the building structure. The plate height is about 12 feet on the first floor currently, but then there's a parapet that extends up above that to shield the solar panels from view and also shield the skylights from view. At the top floor, the floor to ceiling height in the second level is about 9 feet. Is that correct, Nami? I believe it's 9 feet, which puts the plate height at around 24 feet, something like that, with a minimal parapet built up at the top.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other questions of the commission, we will go into commission comments. All right, Al, do you want to start?
I can start, yes. Okay, so I'm very impressed with the design. I think that it's creative, uses the site well, really distinctive, great choice of materials. Typically I would be a little uncomfortable with the amount of impervious surface, with it increasing as much as it is over what's currently there. But as I reviewed the plans, I really can't see much that I would change. So, you know, even though it's a number that's pretty high, it seems pretty reasonable to me. I thought that the landscaping was very well thought out. You know, it's concentrated very close to the house, looked good in terms of the plant selection. Water use was very, very good. In terms of lighting, I feel like the lighting plan is good. I do think that the pool lights are a bit much. I would rather see just 5 lights rather than 7, because those are relatively bright lights. So you know, that I have a minor quibble with the lights in the pool. And just in terms of the lights, the wall lights, path lights, the recessed down lights, I would like to see those on some sort of a motion sensor or timer, just to make sure that they're not on for lengthy periods of time. I think that they're quite reasonable for spaces when they're being used, but I wouldn't want to see those just left on all the time. Let's see. I'm pleased to see that there's no plans for a gate. I think that helps the overall feel of the community. I thought that the conservation committee comments about the addition of Buckeye or Madrone on the north side of the property were creative, and I think that that's something worth thinking about a little bit. Neither of those gets too big, and they would help a little bit. And then, you know, then the big issue is in terms of the view impact from 148. I guess the way I read the design guidelines is certainly not a guarantee that from 148 or from any property you have, you know, the ability to not see any houses. So I think that we're definitely dealing with trade-offs here. I think that the second story is reasonable. I would not say that it needs to be any smaller. I think that it's a key architectural element of the design, and there really isn't a lot of space on that site to just build a single story structure. I did think that the comments from WASC were well thought out, and I think that it is worth the design team looking at moving the house, you know, 5 feet and lowering the height by a foot. You know, just I think those are relatively minor, and they would help a little bit, but still let you keep the real character of the design, which I think is really outstanding. And I appreciate that it's really well considered, not visible from the trail. The material selection's great, you know, very, very green. So just tons and tons of positives. I'm very impressed with it.
Thanks, Al. Jane?
Right, yes, thank you. I too like the property, the design. I think I appreciate the fact that you haven't gone to the maximum on the floor area or the impervious surface, or on the vertical height, or on the maximum height. So you've kept below, well below on the heights on all of those. I like the natives used in the landscapes and the natural groupings. I would also try to reduce the pool lights to either 5 or a similar, you know, number to Commissioner Sill. But would also say dimmer switches and a central light switch to switch off all the external lights. I like the fact you've got the solar, the electric vehicle and grey water set up. Colour board looks great. And I'm happy with the trees that are being removed, the pines, the cedars, etc. I'm concerned about the geologic report regarding moving the building pad slightly backwards. And I'm not sure that a reduction in 12 inches is going to make that much difference to the view from 148 Goya. So I would stick with the design as it is currently, because I think it's a beautiful design, well thought out, and I really like the project.
Thank you, Jane. Dave?
I guess that just leaves me, except for you, Dana.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll start out by by agreeing with everything that Al and Jane have said, and instead of repeating everything that they said. I would, let's see, I know I have some additional things. I will repeat something that Al said. I think the site lighting plan is a very good one. Better than almost any that we see on first review. The fixtures themselves are modest, which I appreciate. I agree with Al about selective switching or timers, something, maybe a solar sensor so that when the sun goes down, the lights go off. In any case, that's usually one of my big concerns about this type of project, where there are exposed views from both below and above. I would be more concerned about lighting than view obstruction were I a neighbor. The view corridor issue is one that comes up pretty frequently for us, of course. We have had neighbors on occasion on various projects insist that the town guidelines require that their view never change. And that's not something that I happen to agree with. I think the guidelines are good guidelines. A lot of time was spent crafting them, and we do pay quite a bit of attention to them. I don't consider them to be prescriptive. I think the impact of this project on the view corridor from 148 is relatively modest, given that the current occupant of that property hasn't expressed any concerns about the view corridor, and the owner of the property has, coming up in their process of siting and designing a replacement house on that site, will have some pretty good opportunities to do some mitigation of their own. If there's a particular view corridor that they really want to emphasize or keep, they'll have the opportunity to study that and deal with that as they design their replacement home. On the CEQA issue raised by Mr. Paul, of course, leave that to the town attorney and the planning department. I don't think we've ever seen a CEQA challenge, at least in my time in Portola Valley, to a residential construction project. The WASC letter, I believe, is, as Al said, well thought out. I think there's an opportunity here for the design team to look at a combination of a couple things. I think the first floor plate height at 12 feet is creates a very grand interior space. I think you would have an almost equally grand space if it was only 11 feet, or maybe even 10 and a half. From the standpoint of the experience of people visiting or living there, I think anything over 10 feet is, pretty grand. So reducing the height of the overall structure by reducing the first floor plate height, I think is the biggest opportunity you have to lower that. I don't really agree with one of WAS's suggestions, which is to plant more screening trees, because as I understand it, it's not the view of the structure itself, but rather the obstruction of the view that the owner at 148 is concerned about. More trees will just create more obstruction of the view. Rather, it may screen the view of the structure itself, but I don't think it's an unattractive structure, and I wouldn't go out of my way to screen the building itself. Moving the structure even a couple of feet to the south, I think will add to the mitigation. The fairly large trees that now will obscure maybe 30% or so of the building would then, it might be up to 40% or closer to 50%. So all in all, I think the net impact on the view corridor of this project will be relatively modest and well within my comfort zone for approval. The WASC letter offers these as suggestions. In fact, I think the language in the letter is that the architect and applicants are encouraged to consider these things. I don't see that in the same light as the owner and attorney for 148 Goya, who characterized them as requested and proposed by WASC. I think there's a real distinction to be made there, that WASC is not demanding anything here. They're just asking for these things to be considered. I just wanted to add that perspective, or my interpretation of WASC's position. So as I understand it, WASC has not yet provided an approval of this project. That would still be pending the final design. And of course, we're not, we respect WASC, but we don't always come up with the same conclusions. But from my point of view, this project is with very little fine tuning, very approvable. It's an excellent project in my view, both architecturally, massing, and siting. And I look forward to seeing it when it's in its final state.
Thanks, Dave. Okay.
Through the chair, Dana, we did receive an email from Megan. So for the other commissioners, these are the comments from Megan Koch, who did go to the site visit but was not able to attend the meeting. She did review the plans as well. She said the site visit today was very helpful. I believe the project to be a positive improvement to the property in Portola Valley. I would like to see the conflicting neighbors work together to ease the view issue. There could be a slight roof line change / height if architecturally feasible. As for the view on the house from above, I believe some well-placed screening using native shrub and trees would also work wonders. Careful placement or removal of any skylights would help mitigate the light spill at night. The homeowner explained the lawn is no longer significant in size and would use low water grasses. That's wonderful. So those are Megan's comments.
Thanks, Laura.
Great.
All right, then I'll finish up here. I mean, my comments are pretty much, in concert with Dave's. I think it's absolutely stunning, the design. I mean, I love the house. I love the color boards. I think the siding is great. I think that I think the relationship between 148 and 138, for me is more profound. I think that it's going to need significant massaging. And that we have an ASCC because of difficult projects like this that are kind of in gray zones. So yes, we have 2-story houses in Portola Valley, and we've approved a bunch of them even on Goya, but there hasn't been that kind of moment of offsite impact that we see here. And I think for me, that second story has got to be massaged. And I think, and hopefully you can do some rotating. Hopefully, I agree with Dave, and that's why I asked about the plate heights. I think 12 feet is high. You know, I think there's a lot of room there. I also wouldn't support planting. I don't think that you don't want to disguise a mistake. So I think that we want to get this right. You know, what Jane and I were there today, as you look down on the property on Escobar, you know, they took pine trees and just completely planted the site, and it looks terrible. I mean, it just looks so artificial. So I'd hate to see this gorgeous building, you know, also be covered up. So I hope there's a solution. I also agree, I'd love to see more reduction in skylights because it casts light into the sky at night. So, but maybe there could be skylight covers. I don't know what, you know, the answer to that is. But, you know, I feel really conflicted because, you know, this is like my kind of house. It's gorgeous. But you know, when I stepped up there today, it was like, whoa, you know, I feel for the neighbor at 148. And I hope that there's a way to massage it and pull it down and turn it. And I mean, I hope that we see that next time. Everything else, landscaping, lighting, all of that works, and I don't want to be repetitive. Yeah, those are my comments. So we'll see this again. Do you guys have questions of us? You're muted.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you for all the feedback. I really appreciate it. We have taken the recommendations to explore from WASP quite seriously, and we've already completed a number of studies. And we do feel that there are some amount of mitigation factors that would be possible without causing significant cost and detriment to the project. We do feel that there is a possibility of pulling out around 12 to potentially 18 inches out of the overall height of the building without causing too much of a disturbance. But it is, I mean, it is a trade-off, and it will be experienceable, and it is relatively significant. But we do think it's possible if it's the kind of thing that would help assuage the concerns of a neighbor. The placement on the site is much more, I should also note with the heights, we're still well below the maximum allowable heights per the code. And so we've tried to already sort of preemptively squeeze the building down below what might be typical of a two-story building in a similar context. So there's not much room left to squeeze, but we feel like we could, you know, shave a couple of inches if it's actually necessary. But we've done our best to keep it as kind of tight as it can be without really compromising the spaces that result. The movement on the site is a little bit more complicated. We do feel like a few feet is possible, but it is a complicated site geologically in terms of the slope, in terms of the soils. And so too much movement actually does create a detriment. And it's not entirely clear to me that it would solve the problem. And one of the difficulties we've been having with the process with the neighbors is that the targets seem to be moving fairly frequently. So at the beginning of the complaint, we were notified that the obstruction of the views of the Hoover Tower was the problem. And then of course, upon review, that wasn't the case. And so now the primary complaint is about the Dumbarton Bridge. And I say this just to reiterate that it's very difficult for us to design sensitively around a plan of theirs that doesn't exist yet. And we, for instance, took to heart the notion that their existing living room, for instance, would want, it's probably an important part of their view corridor that they would, if they lived there, use all the time. And so from that particular location, the house is nearly invisible. Now, in the subsequent months, they've cut down a number of large trees, which are not required to get permits to remove. But if the question of experiencing this house was the primary issue, I think that's not the action that would be taken. So we've tried to be sensitive to the existing location of the house, but then sort of cut and taped a piece of paper onto a site plan somewhere else in the site. And we've tried to adjust for the views that were raised to us about the Hoover Tower. And now that's no longer the landmark of concern. We were told explicitly that the only plan that they would consider, because when we did meet in February, I asked if we could discuss other ways to mitigate any concerns that they might have. We were explicitly told that the only thing that they would consider is a single-story house. And when we came back with our first study of the view corridors, they said, this isn't the one-story plan. You haven't redesigned the house. And so there is some degree of massaging that I think we can do, but it is somewhat limited because we have tried to take a lot of these concerns into account early in the process. And I would say that from the beginning, we do not have a collaborative partner in this, or at least not as we've experienced in other places that we've done projects. But as you can tell here, the Gambiers have been extremely engaged with their neighbors, engaged with their community. They haven't been trying to just sort of force something through here. They're sensitive, concerned people. We like to think of ourselves as sensitive, concerned architects and landscape architects. We want to do projects that make communities better. And we've tried to do that as much as we can. I would say that, you know, to the degree that this brings us towards a resolution, there's definitely a willingness to sort of, as you said, massage it a bit. But on the other hand, you know, we don't want to chase our tails and still not have anybody be happy at the end of, or not have one particular person be happy at the end of it.
Can I just say, this is the first time during my time on the ASCC that I've ever seen a second story sort of objected to like this. I mean, we've got 2-story at 177 Goya, we've got a 2-story at 200 Goya, and 200 Goya is right on top of the hill with looking up from Jasper Ridge, and the ASCC voted those through. So I will not understand why this one is being made to reduce if that is what happens, to be honest.
Well, they're very different properties, 200 and 177. And, you know, I think this relationship between 138 and 148 is a different situation. Those other properties have less offsite impact. So
well, it would depend on where you were standing though, really, wouldn't it?
It does. Yeah. Dan, I had an idea just looking at the floor plans and everything. I mean, and I'm not an architect, but I just thought, I mean, it's a big project. Is there any opportunity to reduce some of the size of the basement and pull some of that height down also? And I'm just going to throw that at you just because that's what came up for me.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we have considered. Part of the problem is as soon as the basement steps inside of what the foundation walls would be outside of the rest of the property, you get huge amounts of kind of redundancy and inefficiency. But also, I don't think the height of the project is being set by the basement because it doesn't really daylight anywhere. We have a stair that takes it up, but it really is just it's a basement. They're not sort of half basement living spaces type things. So I don't know that it would actually lower the height of the project at all.
Well, I think you hear from all of us that we think it's gorgeous, and the color board, I mean, all of it. It's just, you know, for me, and I think Dave a little bit, I think that relationship with the property next door is problematic. Dave, you were about to speak?
Yes, if I may.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that it has been fairly often that we have gone through this process, seen some mitigating of concerns that satisfy the ASCC while not necessarily satisfying a complaining neighbor. So I just wanted to put that out there that we have our concerns. We take into account the concerns and support of neighbors, but that doesn't mean that as a board, we're guided by whether we have a unanimous consent of all neighbors that the project is wonderful. We do listen to all the input, and we make our own judgment. So I'm just saying this because I know there's huge levels of stress around all of this, these negotiations, these reviews, that not having 100% neighbor support is not going to kill your project. but mitigating valid concerns about view corridor to the extent that it's feasible to do so is an appropriate thing for us to ask and for you to try. We're not telling you you have to do these things. You could come back to us for a final review with exactly the same plans and take your chances. But anyway, we're here to give feedback and encouragement for some changes that we think would be positive. I, for one, I think all of us are really looking forward to seeing the final product.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Dave said. I think that he captured my feeling completely, that you don't necessarily have to change everything. I think just make a good faith effort to improve things where you can while still keeping the essence of the design.
Agreed.
All right then, so we'll see you guys again.
Right. Thank you so much for the feedback. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your time as well. It's all volunteer stuff, I know, so really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Karuna.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
So we'll move on here to my agenda. Staff reports.
I have one update for the commission, and this is on the kind of personal professional side. I've been having some health issues, and so I'm going to be out of the office. We estimate about 5 weeks, starting on July 20th. On the positive side, I expect to be completely well upon my return. So this is a very challenging time for me to be out of the office. But I wanted you commissioners to know that that's coming up. And then I'm working with staff. You'll probably see Jeremy more often. You'll hear from him. You'll hear more directly from Dylan probably. We're going to come up with a plan to what we're going to be able to move forward. But Dylan has been working during the time, that we've been working remotely on the projects that were submitted before the shelter in place. And we've moved through several of those, and he's working on some other things that are forthcoming. And then we'll be starting to receive new applications, and then those will start to come through the process. So we're hoping that the timing of this will be okay timing for the ASCC's work. And we just appreciate your increased kind of communication and patience to all of us as we work through this time.
Laura, I'm sure I speak for all of us to say that your health is a much more significant concern than the needs of the ASCC. So do what you need to do, come back healthy, and we will celebrate when you get back.
Thank you.
We'll be remotely drinking wine.
Yeah, that's right.
So we won't have an ASCC meeting while you're out?
Well, Dylan and I will look at the project queue, and if projects are ready to go forward, then we would anticipate there being a meeting while we're out. So we would not, we'll have to staff it differently, but we would not want to hold up projects because of my schedule for that whole time. But we're not, sometimes we have to agenda balance anyway, so we'll just see what we have coming up to bring forward to you.
I think we can do it, right, Dylan?
Yeah, it'll be similar to 305 Golden Oak, the first project when I first started, or I think when I came back from my vacation where I was I didn't know what I was doing. So I have a feeling that's how it's going to be. But yeah, we'll be fine, totally fine.
And maybe Jeremy can join us and show us that he doesn't know what to do either.
Exactly.
Right. And that it's comforting when Jeremy joins us and we all realize, right? So
yeah.
So that so I wanted to let you know about that. And then also as an update, you're all aware that when the shelter in place started and we started working remotely, we had to transition all of our services from completely paper to completely electronic. So we had to basically shut everything down and just do emergency COVID related work. And then we've gradually added back all of our services. So this week we're adding the last of the building permit services. And then Dylan and I are working on the procedures to start taking in those planning applications. We're doing virtual counter meetings. So we've really transitioned our entire work program to be digital. And this is something we're really proud of, because then staff can continue to work from home a good share of the time. We only have, you know, on any given day, 1, 2, or maybe 3 people in the building, and we've got a really good plan for that. And so we feel really optimistic about being able to continue to provide, you know, complete planning and building services. And we're going to start taking in planning applications by appointment in a metered way, so we can actually control when they come in, and then space them out. And then we're hoping that that will help us to process everything smoothly, and then to get into a regular, you know, ASCC schedule, even if we're still doing it in Zoom for some time, to keep those projects moving forward. So positive update, I think.
Yeah. Are you doing FaceTime building inspections?
We are not. A lot of our colleagues in other cities and towns are doing them. I've talked quite a bit to our building inspector. You know, he's contract to talk to his boss about it. We've implemented safety procedures for all of our inspections, but partially, at least, because the cell coverage is not as good in town, and because we don't have electronic plans for all of our existing permits. Some cities that went electronic in the past have electronic plans for everything, so that transition is easier for them.
Right.
So hopefully maybe in the future, but not really yet.
Okay.
All right. So staff report. So the planning issues of the day. Does anyone have any comments on that?
That was interesting.
Yeah. All right, then we'll move to minutes.
I only noticed one little thing on the minutes, and it was the superfluous is, so I don't think it's even worth.
But it shows that you're resident. That's good.
They looked fine to me.
Yeah.
I agree.
Is there a move to approve?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so minutes are passed. And that takes us to adjournment.
Indeed.
Long
Good
meeting.
luck, Laura.
Yep,
Thank
good
you
luck,
very
Laura.
much.
Yes.